Hi, I'm Joe with OCDetailing, and we have finished this Model 3. The car is done. We tinted the windows, we wrapped the whole car, we treated the interior, we coated everything with CQuartz Finest Reserve, and there was only one thing left to do: drive it. With permission from my customer, I was allotted to give you guys a drive and my thoughts on the way this thing rides and how it performs. So I'm very grateful for that. So I'm going to very lightly pull on this door and notice that the window's still cracked, so the door is not closed. So I'm going to re-engage the actuator. I'm going to close the door a little harder, and it's still not closed. So I actually have to use a little force on this. It's not that I'm beating up the car, it's that you kind of have to close the door because it's a very solid, well-built door. We're going to go to the mothership. We're going to go to the Tesla factory. So I'm going to go ahead and use this navigation to do that. As you can see, it's about a 17-minute drive, so I'm sure we will do some editing here. While I'm driving, if I want to see behind me, I can. I don't know if this is a clear enough camera, though, to actually write down somebody's license plate that's tailgating you. You know, just feeling the power of just driving normally. Like, this car does not feel underpowered at all. This is the bigger battery car. And I might be looking around more than I would if I was driving my own car, but it's not my car, so I'm being careful. So now I've engaged the cruise control. Which you engage by clicking this down. Holy shit. I do not feel like this car has adaptive cruise control. It wasn't gonna stop. I don't know if I'm a fan of this cruise control. I don't know how this is gonna work when it's autopilot, but to engage this cruise control, you click all the way down on your drive stick here. As far as like plus and minus in it, you have to actually hit the screen instead of like traditionally having a control or a button like at reach of your steering wheel that'll allow you to do that. Also, I noticed that I do have the lanes where I can tell this car has the cameras and stuff, but it's not doing adaptive cruise from what I can tell. Like, if I feel like it's not slowing down and speeding up with traffic, and I also don't have an indicator here to select how far or back I want the car in front of me to be. Driving on the freeway, it's actually pretty quiet in here. I would say this is just as quiet as an S or an X. There's not a ton of road noise, but there is some. Maybe it kind of reminds me of driving an S with the 21-inch wheels, so you're getting some tire noise when you're driving, but also keep in mind that when you're in a Tesla, there's no motor in here making noise, so there's really nothing to drown anything out except Alex breathing because he can't keep the camera straight and me talking, which isn't a lot. So one thing that's, I guess it would just take some getting used to, but I don't like how it doesn't split the screen like a Model S or a Model X does when you're listening to music and looking at your navigation. I would like to see my Navi up here and then like the audio options there, but instead it does this where it's almost like a slide down to be able to see the full map, which probably just being picky, but I just noticed that and I'm not a huge fan of it. Same thing with the AC controls. So it does the same type of thing. I don't know how I feel about that. If I'm sitting at a light like this, it doesn't bother me, but if I'm driving, that might annoy me just a little bit. The touchscreen is really responsive though. It's very responsive. So we're pulling into Tesla, somewhere where I am loved at the service center because I've been over here so many times and I'm really good friends with everybody over here. And on occasion, I am hated at the delivery center when it was over here. So I'm hoping we don't have too much of a line here. Tesla employee waved at us. That was pretty nice of him. So it looks like there's not a line for the charging right now. That's great. So let's see how fast a Model 3 actually will charge at a charging station. So now that we're at the charging station, we push this, the door opens, we grab the supercharger, we put it in, and then we wait. We're now supercharging the car. It's got 40 minutes remaining to be full. This is actually 108 miles an hour, which is really high. I think it has something to do with the fact that this charging station is not completely packed right now, because I've seen it go a lot slower than this before. And we're off. We had a couple people come talk to us, a few people taking pictures. These cars seem to draw a lot of attention. I think that's pretty cool. It's kind of fun. You're sitting here with a bunch of people with, you know, $100,000 plus cars, and they all want to come talk to you about this one. It's cool. I'm sure that'll change when there's a billion of these on the road, but at least that's the hope and dream. A billion make it to the road. I think at the rate Elon's going, maybe, yeah, I don't even want to speculate. So I see here where it's showing me there's cars in front of there, so all the autopilot cameras are working, but it's not, huh. Oh my God, this car needs those wheels. OC. What do you know? You type in OCDetailing, the first thing that pops up. We did not plan that, it just happened that way. Oh, that's pretty cool. When lights come on, the screen turns black. I have driven a million Model S's and X's. I don't remember if it does that or not. It might. So I'm gonna do a little acceleration test here, just to see. I don't have a lot of room, but this car feels very powerful. It does not feel slow. Does not quite feel as torquey as a Model S per se, but definitely would have no problem getting up to speed or passing someone on the freeway. You would not be starved for power in this car. So I got to go on my drive in the Model 3. I will say that my initial impression was it felt very much like a Tesla electric car. The instant torque was there, the acceleration was there, the power of, like, the feeling of power that's kind of false because you get that instant oomph with those cars. There's no delay between combustion that you get with an ICE car. It's just you tap the accelerator and the car starts to move. I wasn't out romping on it and, you know, trying to go fast in it or anything like that. I was just feeling the way it really drives. I did notice that the car had a pretty stiff suspension setup, which makes sense for the class of car it is. The steering wheel feel, while in sport mode, was very heavy, very responsive. I did get more feedback than I expected through the steering wheel, which is pretty impressive because even on a Model S, like you don't get a ton of feedback through the steering wheel, which you get a lot more on this car. Maybe because it's smaller. You know, the autopilot features, I don't know if they're just not engaged on this car, if it wasn't an option, but it does have all the radars and stuff. You see the little screen that shows where the cars are around you, just like you do in a Model S and a Model X. It's a little bit different on that one. It's actually a bigger display of that, because on the S and X you get it in the middle of your center cluster. Instead on there you've got like a whole third of the screen that just shows that. But when engaging it, I did notice that it's, you know, the adaptive cruise, if it's there, like I guess it's part of the AP, wasn't working. And again, I'm sure all this stuff will come with software updates. But I didn't really like how they placed the autopilot engagement on the drive column. At one point while I was driving, I actually accidentally put the car in neutral while I was driving. Attempting to engage the autopilot, because I'm assuming it would just engage just like a Model S does. You would double tap it down, but double tapping it, you know, like if you tap it too much, you almost can select a different gear with it. As far as like the actual like layout of the screen while you're driving and being able to see your speedometer and stuff, I I thought it would be easier. Like, I really did, but it's like you almost have to look over at the screen, almost like you would your rearview mirror, to see exactly how fast you're going. You don't see it right out of your peripherals when you have your eyes on the road, which I don't think it's the end of the world or anything like that, but it would just take some time to get used to. The other thing I discovered is that, you know, I held down the steering wheel button for 5 seconds while I was driving, the one on the right, and it did nothing. I pushed it left and right, it did nothing. As far as I can tell, the only things those controls right now is either your steering wheel adjustment or your mirrors. And you know, the mirror and steering wheel controls are actually pretty, steering wheel adjustment controls are pretty intuitive. They are done right from the screen. It's, you know, I set up a driver profile on that car for OCDetailing. As far as like the openness of the car, it really is nice, but all the windows on this car were tinted, so I don't know how that would feel in a car without window tint on all the windows. I could imagine that on a bright sunny day, it would probably get pretty hot in there because you've got a lot of glass. And I mean, even though the glass on top of the car is black, you know, it is factory shaded privacy glass, and it's probably got some UV and stuff in there. I would be willing to bet just physics alone, black attracts heat, would cause that glass to get pretty hot while you're driving, and you would probably feel that in the car. And along with that, you know, there's a lot of light coming through. As turning, the car did have a very nimble feel to it. It felt like you could throw that car around a little bit if you wanted to have fun with it, or go around a corner a little bit fast, or get onto an on-ramp going kind of quick. The turning radius on that car reminds me very much of usually a high performance sports car. It's not a very great turning radius. I would not be surprised if you see some 3 and 4 point turns to get into parking spaces with one of those. Which, you know, not a bad thing. It just sometimes if you're not used to it, you'll notice it right away. Because I know that I had a car that had a really tight turning radius like that, and I did not notice when I was driving the car, or when I was test driving the car. So it's something I always check now. But after I bought it and had driven it around for a little bit, it drove me nuts, and I ended up getting rid of the car. Not saying that's going to be the case with this one, because it's a little bit of a different kind of car, but that is something that, you know, if you're up in the air between an S or a 3, you might want to go drive both of them, because that turning radius thing, yeah, I can imagine in a Whole Foods parking lot that was packed full of traffic wouldn't exactly serve to your benefit of finding an optimal parking space. The regenerative braking on the car is very strong. Like, I've driven lots of S's and X's, and the regenerative braking is very noticeable on those cars too. So I wouldn't say it's stronger or weaker than the S or the X, but it does work really well. It also has the kind of gauge that you see in an S and an X, just it's a lot smaller because it's literally the size of a line underneath your speedometer. It goes green when you're in regen, it goes white when you're pushing the accelerator. And yeah, so I guess, you know, my final impressions is that, you know, this is going to be a car that a lot of people will love. I'm sure everybody could tear it apart and find a few things here and there they don't like about it, but considering what you're getting, you know, an electric car, an electronic car. I really enjoyed when I said that in the first video. I was like, wow, did I just say electronic car? That's quirky. I guess I get nervous on camera too. But it's an electric car that is affordable, you know, well, that's relative, but it is an affordable car compared to, say, an S or an X, and compared to like the cars in this class, where you look at some of like the Bolts and Leafs and, you know, the similarly priced electric cars, hands down, I would pick the Tesla over any of them. And I've been in those cars too. Not that they're bad or anything like that, but I would definitely take a Tesla over any of those. So I really look forward to see how these things do. I really hope Elon gets all his production values together, and we get to see a lot more things on these roads. Please subscribe for more videos. I'm Joe from OCDetailing. Thank you.